Hello, my name is James Miller. I'm 65 years old, and I live in Asheville, North Carolina. This is Stories of Aging, a place where I listen and share stories of growing old. Memories that once faded into silence now find their voice again, reminding us that every life deserves to be remembered. Today's story is about a man named Jack Meyers, a retired mechanic, a quiet observer, and a man who never imagined that driving a school bus in his later years would put him in the path of a child's silent cry for help. Jack spent decades fixing engines and solving problems under the hood, but nothing prepared him for the quiet pain of a young girl named Sophie, a girl whose tears went unseen by almost everyone, until Jack chose to pay attention. What you'll hear is not just a story of concern, it's a story of courage, of stepping into the uncomfortable, of making a choice to intervene when most would turn away, because sometimes it's the quietest moments of noticing that change everything. If you've ever wondered whether small acts matter, if you've ever felt the pull to help even when you're scared you'll get it wrong, then this story is for you. Let's begin. My name is Jack Meyers, and at 64, I never imagined I'd be driving a yellow school bus through the streets of Maplewood, Ohio. After retiring from nearly 4 decades as a diesel mechanic, I thought I'd spend my days fixing up old cars and watching baseball. But life had other plans, and when the mornings grew too quiet, I found myself applying to drive Bus 23 for Maplewood Middle School. Most days the kids chatter and laugh from the moment they climb aboard, filling the bus with life. But last week, I noticed something that's been weighing on me. There's a girl, Sophie Miller, 8th grade, who sits 3 seats back, right above the air vent. She's small, with long brown hair that she keeps tucked around her face like a curtain. At first, I thought she was just shy, but then I started seeing her wipe away tears when she thought no one was looking. Day after day, the same thing, quiet, withdrawn, and always waiting until the bus emptied before she let her guard down. As I adjusted my rearview mirror today and caught sight of Sophie's hunched shoulders, I felt something stir deep in my chest. I've seen a lot in my life, but few things trouble me like the silent heartbreak of a kid. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I need to do something. The next afternoon, I kept a close eye on Sophie in the mirror as I rolled through the Maplewood neighborhoods. The October sun cast long beams across the bus seats, painting golden stripes on the floor. Kids were laughing about Halloween costumes, sports tryouts, and weekend sleepovers, all the ordinary noise that made my job a little brighter. But Sophie stayed in her usual seat, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped tightly around her blue backpack. Every now and then, I saw her swipe a sleeve across her cheek, brushing away quiet tears. My heart clenched. I wanted to say something, but with the other kids around, I didn't want to embarrass her. When we hit Oak Lane, 2 boys rushed up the aisle to get off, tossing me casual, "Thanks, Mr. Meyers," as they hopped down the steps. I gave a small wave, but my mind stayed with Sophie. By the time only 5 kids were left, her face had softened into quiet sadness. Then something odd. I caught her leaning forward, her hand slipping beneath the seat, near the air vent. A faint clink sounded on the metal floor. "You okay back there, Sophie?" I asked gently. She jerked upright, eyes wide. "Yes, sir, just dropped a tissue." But the look on her face told me this was no ordinary tissue. As we reached the last stop on the route, the streets grew quieter, lined with tall maples shedding fiery leaves. Sophie's stop was at the end of Brookfield Drive, a small white house with peeling shutters and a cracked walkway. I eased the bus to a stop, pulled the lever to open the door, and called softly, "Last stop, Sophie." She stood slowly, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. Her eyes were rimmed red, her face pale. As she stepped past me, I mustered the gentlest smile I could. "Have a good evening, Sophie." To my surprise, I found myself rising from my seat and stepping down onto the sidewalk after her. "Sophie," I called softly. She turned, her face tightening in alarm. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," I said carefully. "I've noticed you've been a little down lately. Is everything all right at home?" Before she could answer, the front door swung open, and a tall man stepped onto the porch. His face was hard, expression unreadable. "Is there a problem?" he called out sharply. "I'm Jack Meyers, the school bus driver," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Just checking in." "I'm Dan Whitmore, her stepdad. he said coolly. "We're fine." But as Sophie hurried up the walkway, she glanced back at me, and in that fleeting moment, her eyes begged me not to leave this alone. That night, after the last student stepped off, I parked the bus back at the depot. The sun had slipped below the horizon, and the air smelled of damp leaves and cold pavement. I grabbed my trash bag and started my usual routine, walking down the aisle to check for lost homework, snack wrappers, or forgotten jackets. When I reached Sophie's seat, third from the front above the air vent, I hesitated. I remembered the faint clink from earlier, her quick excuse about a tissue, and the look in her eyes when I followed her off the bus. Something didn't sit right. Crouching down, my knees creaking in protest, I reached beneath the seat. My fingers brushed something smooth, not paper, not plastic. With a little effort, I tugged out a small blister pack of pink pills. My heart jumped as I turned it over, reading the label. Birth control. For a long moment, I just sat there on the edge of the seat, staring at it. A 14-year-old girl, new in town, crying every day on my bus, hiding birth control pills under her seat. My gut twisted. I pulled out my phone, snapped a few pictures, and sat back in the driver's seat, the weight of responsibility settling heavy on my shoulders. I couldn't look away from this, not anymore. Back in the driver's seat, I stared at the pictures on my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. The right thing to do was clear, but that didn't make it easy. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Principal Kelly's number. My fingers shook slightly as I typed a message. Found this under a student's seat. Very concerned. Please advise. I attached the photos and hit send. I waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes. Nothing. With a sigh, I hit the call button. The phone rang 3 times before I heard a clipped voice. "Jack, I'm in a school board meeting. Can this wait?" "I really think you should check your messages, sir," I said, trying to keep the urgency from my voice. "I'll look when I'm done," he replied, and before I could say another word, click. Call ended. For a moment, I just sat there in the quiet, the hum of the cooling engine filling the cabin. My chest tightened with frustration. I tucked the pills into my waist bag, locked up the bus, and shuffled to my old Ford parked in the lot. As I pulled out onto Main Street, a single thought gnawed at me. Sophie's house is on my way home. The streets of Maplewood were quiet as I drove, the last traces of daylight fading into purple twilight. I passed Sophie's street, heart pounding, torn between going home and checking in. At the next intersection, I made a sharp U-turn. When I pulled up near her house, it was dark. No lights in the windows, no sound, no movement. I parked down the block and stepped out, dialing the number listed under Dan Whitmore on the school's emergency contact sheet. Voicemail. With a heavy sigh, I slid back into the driver's seat and started toward home. But 2 blocks later, just past Cedar Pharmacy, I saw her. Sophie, walking alone on the sidewalk, one arm hugging her stomach, pale as a ghost. Without thinking, I pulled over. "Sophie," I called softly as I got out. She froze, eyes wide, then glanced away, tightening her grip around her waist. "I'm fine," she mumbled, but she looked anything but fine. "Where's your stepdad?" I asked carefully. "That's not your business," she shot back, her voice brittle. "Please, just leave me alone." Before I could answer, a couple walking by slowed down, looking between us with concern. Sophie's voice cracked as she told them quietly, "He scares me." And just like that, I was the one they saw as the threat. I backed away, hands raised, heart sinking as the couple stepped protectively between Sophie and me. "I'm her school bus driver," I tried to explain, voice shaking. "I was just worried." "She said to leave her alone," the man interrupted firmly. "Move along, or we're calling the police." I clenched my jaw, nodding stiffly, and walked back to my car. As I pulled away from the curb, I watched in the rear-view mirror. The couple walked on, and Sophie was left alone once more. That's when I saw her stumble toward a nearby trash bin and vomit, her small body trembling over the edge. My hands tightened on the wheel. Something was terribly wrong. I couldn't shake the image of the pills, the tears, the way she clutched her stomach. I pulled into a side street and parked across from the liquor store at the end of the block, heart pounding. Minutes later, Sophie emerged, and behind her, Dan Whitmore. Dan, locked the store door behind them, a small paper bag in hand. They walked to a gray sedan, and from where I sat, I saw him hand Sophie a drink. She sipped, gaze fixed on the ground. My gut twisted. I pulled out my phone again, finger hovering over the emergency call button. My finger hovered over the emergency call button, the weight of uncertainty pressing on my chest. Am I overreacting? I thought. What if it's just a rough patch at home? What if I call the police and it all blows up for nothing? But then I looked up. Dan placed his hand on Sophie's shoulder, steering her toward the car, and something in the way she stiffened sent a cold chill through me. I couldn't walk away. Not this time. As they pulled out onto the road, I started my car and followed at a cautious distance. My old Ford rattled a bit over the potholes, but I kept them in sight as they headed toward the edge of town, away from neighborhoods, past the library, and toward Maplewood Park, a quiet stretch of woods and trails near the river. I flipped through my contacts with one hand, eyes flicking back and forth between the road and my phone, until I landed on Margaret Owens, Sophie's homeroom teacher. Hello? Her warm voice answered on the third ring. Miss Owens, it's Jack Meyers, the bus driver, I said hurriedly. I need to ask you something about Sophie Miller. There was a pause. Is everything okay, Jack? I don't think so, I murmured, eyes fixed on the gray sedan ahead as it turned into the darkened park. I really don't think so. Miss Owens' voice tightened on the line. What's going on, Jack? I kept my eyes on Dan's car as it pulled into the far lot near the old maintenance shed at Maplewood Park. She's been crying every day on the bus, I explained, voice low. And today I found birth control pills hidden under her seat. I just saw her leave a liquor store with her stepdad. And now they're here, meeting 3 strange men by the picnic tables. There was a long pause. I've noticed things too, Miss Owens said quietly. Sophie's withdrawn. She excuses herself from class all the time, and today she was found sleeping in the drama room. She let out a breath. Jack, this is serious. I think I should call the police, I said, my hands gripping the wheel tightly. Please wait just a moment, she urged. The principal, I already tried him, I interrupted. He's not answering. As we spoke, I saw the 4 men, Dan and the 3 strangers, lead Sophie toward the shed. One of them unlocked the door, glancing around before they all slipped inside. My gut twisted into knots. I'm sorry, Margaret, I said softly, but I can't wait. I hung up, took a breath, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My voice came out rough, urgent. This is Jack Meyers. I'm at Maplewood Park near the maintenance shed on the east side. A teenage girl was just taken inside by 4 adult men, including her stepfather. She's one of my bus riders, and I believe she's in danger. The dispatcher's tone sharpened. Are you able to stay safe and keep visual contact without approaching? Yes, I breathed, pressing my back against a cluster of trees. Through the dirty window of the shed, I could just make out shapes. Sophie cornered against the wall, and the men crowding around her. My skin crawled. Officers are on their way. ETA 10 minutes. Can you give me descriptions of the individuals? I quickly relayed what I knew. Dan's height, the men's clothes, the gray sedan. As I crouched in the shadows, a rustling noise behind me made my heart lurch. I spun around to see 2 joggers, sweaty and confused, eyeing me warily. What are you doing, man? One of them asked. I swallowed hard. There's a girl in that shed. She needs help. Police are on their way. Their expressions shifted from suspicion to grim determination. We're not just standing here. Together we approached the shed, every nerve in my body on fire. The taller jogger pounded on the shed door with his fist. Hey, open up in there, he shouted. A tense silence followed. My heart thudded so loudly, I thought they might hear it inside. Then through the thin walls of the shed, a voice, soft, broken, cried out, Help, please help me. The joggers froze. I fumbled with my phone. You hear that? I told the dispatcher, still on the line. She's calling for help. She's inside. Officers are arriving now, the dispatcher responded. And just then, I saw the flashing lights appear at the edge of the park. 2 patrol cars flew down the gravel path, tires spitting dust. 4 officers jumped out before the cars even fully stopped, weapons drawn, voices firm. Police, come out with your hands where we can see them. No answer. An officer ran back to his cruiser and returned with a battering ram. Within seconds, the door cracked. then splintered open under the force of the strike. "Hands up! Down on your knees!" I saw the 3 unknown men drop quickly. But Dan, he stayed standing, looming over Sophie, who was huddled against the wall, crying. "Step away from the girl," an officer barked. Dan didn't move. My blood ran cold. Then he reached for something on a nearby shelf. "Drop it! Hands in the air!" the officers shouted, their voices sharp with command. Dan's fingers closed around the neck of a bottle on the shelf. Maybe alcohol, maybe something heavier. His jaw was clenched, his body tense like a coiled spring. For a second, the whole world seemed to freeze. "Dan, don't do it," I whispered under my breath, watching from the tree line. My fists clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. For a heartbeat, I thought he might swing, might charge, might turn this into a nightmare none of us could undo. But then, with a sharp exhale, Dan slammed the bottle back down on the shelf. His hands rose, fingers spread, face twisted with fury. "On your knees!" the officers yelled again. This time, Dan obeyed. But as the officers moved in, he jerked suddenly, twisting out of their grip, and lunged toward the door. His eyes locked on mine, burning with rage. "This is your fault!" he bellowed, lunging toward me. Before I could even flinch, 2 officers tackled him from behind, dragging him down, pinning him hard against the dirt. I stumbled back, heart hammering in my chest, as they cuffed him and led the men away one by one. Inside the shed, Sophie remained curled up, arms wrapped around her knees, rocking softly, her face buried in her arms. My heart broke at the sight. She was safe now, but she looked so small, so alone. Yellow crime scene tape soon stretched across the old shed as police cars lined the edge of Maplewood Park. The once quiet corner had turned into a blur of flashing lights, murmured voices, and the steady click of cameras. I gave my statement to the officers, my hands still trembling slightly as I recounted what I'd seen, from the birth control pills to the moment Sophie cried for help. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sophie sitting on the open tailgate of an ambulance. A paramedic draped a blanket over her narrow shoulders, gently checking her pulse. Next to her sat a woman I hadn't seen before, a social worker, I assumed, speaking softly, notebook in hand. The 2 joggers who had helped were giving their statements nearby. One caught my eye and gave me a quiet nod, a small gesture of solidarity. When the police finished with me, I turned to leave, but then I heard a faint voice. "Mr. Meyers?" I looked up. Sophie was watching me, her eyes still red and puffy, but a flicker of something, maybe relief, maybe trust, had crept into her face. The social worker gave me a small wave, motioning me over. I approached slowly, kneeling slightly so I could meet Sophie's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice raw and trembling. I felt my throat tighten. "I'm just glad you're safe now, Sophie," I murmured. "That's all that matters." As I crouched beside the ambulance, I gently held out the small blister pack of pills I had found on the bus. Sophie's eyes widened, and fresh tears pooled along her lashes. The social worker placed a reassuring hand on Sophie's back. "You're not in trouble, sweetheart. We just want to understand what's been going on." For a long moment, Sophie stared down at her trembling hands. Then, in a voice so quiet I had to lean in to hear, she began. "My mom married Dan last year," she whispered, twisting the edge of the blanket between her fingers. "He was really nice at first, but when she got pregnant, things changed." Her breath hitched. "Mom left 2 weeks ago to stay at my grandma's before the baby comes. And when she left Dan, he started coming into my room." The paramedic and social worker exchanged a quiet, heavy glance. I didn't know what to do," Sophie choked out. "A girl at school told me to get those pills so I wouldn't get pregnant." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I hid them on the bus so no one would find them at home." My chest ached as I listened, the pieces falling into place with a sickening clarity. "Sophie," the social worker said softly, "we're going to get you the help you need. You are so brave, and you are not alone." The hospital's emergency room was alive with the usual late-night sounds. Hurried footsteps, soft beeping monitors, low murmurs from behind curtains. I sat in one of the plastic chairs near the waiting area, a cup of lukewarm coffee in hand, watching through the glass doors as Sophie was wheeled away for a full exam. A nurse had assured me she was in good hands. Still, the knot in my chest wouldn't loosen. About an hour later, the sliding doors burst open and two women rushed in, one in her late 30s, visibly pregnant, and an older woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes blazing with worry. "Where's my daughter? Where's Sophie?" the younger woman cried out, voice sharp with panic. A nurse guided them to a private room, but moments later, Sophie's voice called faintly from down the hall. "Mom!" The two women turned as if pulled by a magnet and rushed toward her. Sophie all but collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." Her mother cradled her tightly, rocking back and forth as her own tears fell. The older woman, Sophie's grandmother, I guessed, clenched her fists at her sides, face tight with fury. "Where is he?" she hissed to no one in particular. "Where's that monster?" I stood quietly at a distance, feeling like an outsider to this heartbreak, yet grateful beyond words that Sophie was now surrounded by the people who loved her most. A few minutes later, Dr. Chen, a kind-eyed woman with a calm voice, guided Sophie, her mother, and grandmother into a small consultation room. I waited outside in the hallway, sipping my coffee, listening to the quiet murmur of voices through the partially open door. Inside, Dr. Chen's words floated softly out. "Sophie is in the very early stages of pregnancy, just 1 week along." A sharp inhale came from Sophie's mother, Laura. "No, oh God, no," I heard her whisper, her voice cracking under the weight of it. Sophie's shoulders trembled, and her grandmother, Eleanor, put a protective arm around her. Laura sat heavily into a chair, one hand on her round belly, the other covering her mouth. Her voice broke as she spoke. I left her alone with him. How could I have been so blind?" I shifted on my feet, my heart aching, as I heard Sophie's faint voice say, "I didn't want this, Mom. I swear I didn't want this." Dr. Chen spoke gently about options, the risks, the decisions that lay ahead, and I felt the air in the hallway grow heavier with each passing minute. Part of me wanted to walk away, to give them privacy, but another part knew that even from the edges, I had a place here. When the door opened and Laura stepped out, her eyes raw with tears, she saw me standing there. With a shaky breath, she whispered, "Thank you for not looking away." Laura sank onto the bench beside me, her hand resting protectively over her pregnant belly. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the scuffed tile floor, tears tracing silently down her cheeks. "I never saw it coming," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Dan was so good to me at first, so kind to Sophie, and when I got pregnant, it was like a switch flipped. He became distant, controlling, but I still never imagined this." I stayed quiet, letting her words fill the space between us. Sometimes there's no comfort in a reply, only the comfort of being heard. "She's just a child," Laura said, her voice tightening. "And now, this?" She let out a shaky breath and wiped her eyes roughly. "The doctor said we have time to make decisions. But how do you make a decision like that for your own child?" Across the waiting room, Eleanor stood near Sophie's room, watching through the window, her face a mix of fierce protectiveness and grief. Laura reached out suddenly, her hand trembling as it gripped mine. "Please," she whispered, "stay with her. I need to be with my mother." "But Sophie, she shouldn't be alone." I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. And in that moment, I understood that sometimes, just being present for someone is the most powerful thing we can offer. Minutes later, Eleanor hurried over, her face pale. "Laura, we need you. Your water just broke," she said urgently, her eyes wide. Laura gasped, one hand flying to her belly as another sharp contraction seized her. "Stay calm, honey. We've got you," Eleanor murmured, waving over the nurses. Within seconds, staff swarmed in with a wheelchair, guiding Laura down the hall to the maternity ward. Just before disappearing through the double doors, Laura twisted back, locking eyes with me. "Please," she breathed, her voice strained. "Stay with Sophie. Please don't let her be alone." I nodded firmly, my chest tight. "I promise." As the hallway quieted, I took a deep breath, smoothed my wrinkled jacket, and stepped softly into Sophie's room. She sat cross-legged on the bed, small and fragile, in the oversized hospital gown, staring at the wall. Her eyes flicked toward me, tired and scared. Is my mom okay?" she whispered. "She's strong, Sophie," I said gently, taking the seat by her bed. She's with the doctors now, and your grandma's with her. You're not alone, okay? I'm here with you." Sophie's lip trembled, her hands twisting the blanket in her lap. "Grandma said Mom won't have time for me now," she murmured, "that she'll love the new baby more." My chest tightened. I leaned forward slightly, choosing every word with care. "Sophie, love doesn't run out. It's not a pie where you get smaller slices when more people come to the table. It's like candles lighting each other. It just makes more light." For the first time that night, Sophie's eyes softened. "You really think so?" "I know so," I said quietly, offering the one thing I could in that moment, the truth. Sophie sat in silence, her fingers still nervously knotting the edge of the blanket. Outside her room, the bustle of the hospital continued, the murmur of nurses, the squeak of carts, the soft shuffle of hurried footsteps. But inside, it was just the two of us and the quiet hum of the monitors. "I was so scared," she whispered finally, her voice small. "I thought no one would ever see me." My throat tightened. I reached out carefully, resting a hand on the edge of the bed, close but not pushing into her space. "I saw you, Sophie," I said softly. "I couldn't ignore it, and I won't." Her eyes welled up again, but this time I saw something new flicker there, not just sadness, but a fragile, uncertain trust. A soft knock sounded at the door. A nurse peeked in, smiling kindly. "Your mom's doing well, Sophie," she said. "The baby's on the way, and Grandma's with her. They'll let you visit as soon as things settle." Sophie nodded slowly, her fingers loosening their grip on the blanket. For the first time that night, she let out a small breath that almost sounded like relief. Turning back to me, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." I smiled gently, feeling the weight of the night in my bones. "You're braver than you know, kiddo, and you're not alone anymore." The hours stretched on, but Sophie and I stayed there together, two souls tied by a quiet promise. I watched as her eyes fluttered closed for brief moments, exhaustion tugging at her, only to blink back open when a noise from the hallway stirred her nerves. Each time I reassured her, and slowly her shoulders eased. Near dawn, Eleanor slipped into the room, her face pale but glowing with a bittersweet mix of joy and grief. She moved straight to Sophie, gathering her gently in her arms. "It's a girl," Eleanor whispered softly into Sophie's hair. "Your baby sister's here, and your mom, she keeps asking for you." For a heartbeat, Sophie froze. Then she burst into quiet tears, clinging to her grandmother. A flood of emotions she had held in all night, spilling out at last. I stood back, heart full and aching at once. As I stepped to the door, Sophie's voice stopped me. "Mr. Meyers?" she called softly. I turned. She was watching me, eyes red but calmer now, the smallest ghost of a smile on her face. "Thank you for everything." I felt my throat tighten. "Any time, Sophie. You take care of that big heart of yours." As I walked down the hallway toward the first rays of morning sun breaking through the hospital windows, I carried with me the quiet truth of that night. Sometimes we are placed in each other's lives not to fix everything, but simply to stand beside one another when the world feels too heavy to carry alone. And in that, we bring a light no darkness can touch. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel so I can continue sharing more meaningful stories in future videos. Jack Meyers never expected that his quiet retirement job would place him at the center of a young girl's rescue. But when faced with a choice, to look away or to step in, Jack chose to act. Not with heroics, not with grand gestures, but with steady presence, unwavering care, and the simple courage to say, "I see you." Jack didn't set out to be a hero. He became something far greater, a reminder that ordinary people doing ordinary things with kindness and vigilance can change the course of someone's life. Feel free to share this video with others, especially those in our age group, so these stories can reach the hearts that need them most. And if you have a story you'd like me to tell, leave a comment below. I read every one, and I'll be selecting a few special stories to feature in upcoming episodes.